Warning: in typical fashion of ancient Greek myth, the stories I'm going to tell might include some unpleasant themes like blood and death. Terrible death. I'm not going into gruesome details, but if you don't feel comfortable with these topics at all, you've been warned. And some of these might not be the complete metamorphosis of their entire body, but of their blood or body parts. Also, shout out to my sister for helping me clean my line art and color the flowers for this video. Here's her Instagram. Go follow her because she's amazing. The first flower is saffron, specifically Saffron Crocus. The tale for this one is actually very vague, but it appeared in some sources like Ovid's Metamorphoses and Nonna's Dionysiaca. The story goes like this. Crocus was rejected by a nymph, Smilax, and as a result, the gods took a pity on him and transformed him into Saffron Crocus flower. Later, Smilax shared a similar fate and was turned into bindweed. There's also another version which closely resembles the well-known story of Hyacinthus. In this version of Crocus flower though, Crocus was a friend of Hermes. While Hermes and Crocus played the game of discus, Crocus unexpectedly stood up and the disc killed him. After that, saffron flowers bloom from the spot where Crocus' blood touched the ground. The Complete Language of Flowers book lists the meanings of Crocus flowers as following: beware of excess, cheerfulness, do not abuse, happiness, and mirth. Larkspur. Since we talked a bit about Hyacinthus in the previous section, it would make sense to talk about Larkspur now. Some people might understand that a man named Hyacinthus would be the origin of the purple hyacinth flower. However, it's more likely that the flower he transformed into was either a larkspur, an iris, or maybe other flowers that the ancient Greeks also referred to as hyacinthos. No matter which flower it was, this is a story of how Hyacinthus got turned into a flower. Hyacinthus was a beautiful Spartan man loved by Apollo, and like Crocus, he was playing a game of discus. Apollo threw the disc, and as Hyacinthus ran to catch it, the disc struck his head, killing him. And in sorrow, Apollo created flowers from Hyacinthus' blood. But of course, like many Greek tales, there is an alternative version of the story. In the alternative version, it was also Zephyrus, the west wind, who loved Hyacinthus. Apollo and Hyacinthus were playing discus like the previous version, but it was Zephyrus who caused the accident by blowing the disc off course. This kind of link with the larkspur meaning of open heart and swiftness. Heliotrope is a small shrub known for its sweet-smelling flowers and its property to turn toward the sun. Many of you may have heard the story of a water nymph called Clytie, who fell in love with the sun god Helios and was turned into a sunflower after she was rejected by the god himself. But in truth, it was quite uncertain which flower she actually turned into, though it's most likely a purple common heliotrope. Here is the full story. Clytie was an oceanid or a water nymph and was a former lover of Helios. Their love ended when Aphrodite made Helios fall in love with a Persian princess named Leucotho in revenge. It was because Helios exposed Aphrodite's affair with Ares. So Helios abandoned Clytie, and of course Clytie needed to do something about this. So she went to King Orcamus, the prince's father, and told him about the prince's relationship with the god Helios. The king decided to bury Princess Leucotho alive as a punishment. Wait, isn't that your daughter? Anyway, Helios wasn't fast enough to save the princess, and in grief he turned her into a frankincense tree. So, after that, Clytie tried to win back the god's heart, but of course he wouldn't go back to her. So she sat naked on the rocks for 9 days, refusing food and drink, and desperately gazed at the sun from sunrise to sunset. Eventually, she was transformed into a purple heliotrope and still continues to turn towards the sun every day. Similar to this tale, heliotrope symbolizes eternal love and devotion. Fun fact, the word heliotrope comes from the Greek word helios meaning sun and tropos meaning turning, so heliotrope literally means sun turning. Aside from the purple flower, the word heliotropism refers to the phenomenon where plants or other organisms move in response to sunlight, like sunflowers. This is probably the most famous one, as the term narcissism we use nowadays was derived from the name Narcissus. Narcissus was a beautiful man who was loved by so many people. One of the most well-known tales was between him and Echo, a mountain nymph who was cursed to only repeat the words of the others. Echo had met Narcissus and fell in love with him, but she could not express her thoughts and could only repeat what Narcissus said. In Orchid Metamorphosis, Echo did try to embrace him and he did cry, "Away with these encircling hands, may I die before what's mine is yours." Echo ran away, humiliated. Before her strength faded, her form wasted away until only her voice remained. Well, that was the origin of the echo sound. Well, for me, personally, it was absolutely understandable from Narcissus' point of view why he cursed Echo like that. But after that, in the tale, he continued to scorn the love of other people. One of those people he spurned then wished that Narcissus fall in love with someone he cannot have. These words were heard by Nemesis, goddess of vengeance. So Nemesis cursed Narcissus to fall in love with himself, and one day while he was drinking water from a secluded fountain, he was entranced by his own reflection, yet he could not embrace it. And because he was so entranced, he could not leave his eyes from the reflection, he stayed at the fountain until he died and got turned into the Narcissus flower. It was believed that even when he crossed the Stygian River underworld, his eyes were still fixed on the water reflection. After reading this, I wonder if he really deserved this. Is it that wrong? I guess he could be nicer, I don't know. But it was in Conan's version that he did worse and made me agree that he's quite problematic. So in Conan's version, the one who wished him curse was Amenias, a hunter. Like Arthur's, Amenias was in love with Narcissus and got rejected. But what Narcissus did was terrible. Narcissus didn't only reject him but also gave a sword to Amenias to kill himself. And before Amenias actually did it, he prayed to Nemesis to give Narcissus a lesson. There are many floriographies for this flower, but the ones that seem related to the Greek tales are self-love, unrequited love, vanity, and egoism. But Narcissus or Daffodil does have other positive symbolisms like rebirth, vitality, and awareness. Alright, you might want to take this one with a grain of salt, because though I have found many articles online about this, I can't find any legit source of where the tale of Peony came from. There might be some differences in details depending on where you read it, but most will say that Peony was named after Paeon, a physician to the gods. Paeon was an immortal student to Asclepius, the god of medicine. He discovered the healing properties of peony roots and used them to heal Hades when he was wounded by Heracles. Now, this is where the stories from different sources differ. Some write that Zeus transformed Paeon into a peony to protect him from Asclepius' wrath, while others say that it was Hades. And in general, peony represents romance, bashfulness, and good fortune. Orchid was named after Orchis, the son of a nymph and a satyr. During the feast of Dionysus, the god of wine, Orchis assaulted one of Dionysus' predecessors, and I'm quite content to hear that it doesn't end well for Orchis. As punishment, Orchis was torn into pieces by a wild beast. Orchis' father begged Dionysus to give his son back, which the god refused, and only turned the bits into flowers. Well, for me, he didn't deserve such good treatment, but well, at least he suffered before he, By the way, this is not a classical Greek myth, but it was most likely created by a French writer, Louis Leger, in 1704. Additionally, the word orchid comes from the Greek word orchis, which means testicle. This name was given because the underground tubers of some orchid species resemble testicles. And that's why orchid relates to virility in ancient Greek. The tale of Anemone is among the more famous ones. For those who don't know, it is said that Anemone sprang from the blood of Adonis, the ideal male beauty. Even today, it is not uncommon to call an exceptionally handsome young man Adonis. Adonis was a mortal lover of Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. and also Persephone, but the latter goddess is not really the point right now. But of course, because of that, Ares, god of war, who was also Aphrodite's lover, got jealous of this, so he sent a wild boar to kill Adonis. Despite Aphrodite's effort to save him, Adonis died from his wounds. As she wept over his body, her tears mixed with his blood and the first anemone bloomed. Anemone also carries many meanings, but the one that relates to this tale is forsaken love. And here's a fun fact. There's a festival called Adonia, a non-official festival celebrated especially by women in Athens. Women would plant a pot of fast-growing plants called an Adonis garden and place it on the rooftop during hot summer. The garden would grow fast but also soon wither, and during the festival they would mourn the death of Adonis. One interesting interpretation of this ritual significance is that because the ideal Athenian women are supposed to be silent and kept out of public, this is one of the rare chances for them to express their grief and emotions openly. Poppy is a flower mostly associated with Hypnos, god of sleep, and Thanatos, god of peaceful death, due to its sedative property. But several origin tales of the flower were linked to Demeter, the goddess of harvest. One tale suggests that the flower was the transformation of a man named Mecon, Demeter's lover, after his death. Other versions might say that it's either Demeter herself or other gods who created Poppy to help Demeter's fall asleep after Persephone, her daughter, was abducted by Hades. Poppy is well known in Western countries as the remembrance flower. It also represents restful sleep and life and death due to its relation with Hypnos and Thanatos. By the way, if you are an edgy kid who is interested in flowers that symbolize death, like specifically death, I have compiled quite a list in this video from last year. Dianthus is a genus of plants with flowers mostly with ringed petals and a spicy clove-like fragrance. Well-known flowers like carnations are in this genus. The name Dianthus comes from the Greek word dios, meaning earth zeus or divine, and anthos, meaning flower. Despite its beautiful meaning, the origin tale of this flower is not so glorious. So here's the story. One day, after a long, unsuccessful hunt, Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, encountered a shepherd playing a flute. The goddess was then furious, believing his music had scared away the animals, so she gouged the shepherd's eyes out. Later, when she calmed down, she realized what she did, and so she created carnations with bloodied eyes out of remorse. Like roses, the meanings of carnations vary depending on their color, but they typically mean fascination and admiration. The last one is roses, the favorite of many people and also a flower of so many tales. One of the most common stories goes as follows. According to poet Anacreon, white roses appeared from the sea foam that surrounded Aphrodite during her birth. There's also separate stories for red roses, which are connected to the tale of Adonis and the creation of Anemone that I told you before. So before Aphrodite's tears mixed with Adonis' blood and turned it into Anemone, when the goddess learned about the wild boar, she rushed to Adonis, pricking her ankles with white rose thorns and her blood dyeing the roses red. But that's nothing relating to a person being transformed into a flower, is it? So, there's this another version of the creation of roses that I'm not very sure where the original text was, but here is the story anyway. This myth says that the first rose was created by Chloris, the goddess of flowers and spring, known in Roman version as Flora. One day, she found a lifeless body of a beautiful nymph in the forest. And with sadness, she transformed the nymph into a flower. Then Chloris called out to the gods to help her. The gods who appeared might differ a bit depending on where you read the story, but always say that Dionysus gave the flower its fragrance and Aphrodite gave the flower its beauty. If you want me to make a list of all the meaning roses contain, I'd rather make a separate video about it because there's a lot. But as a common knowledge, red and pink roses mean love, white roses are purity, and yellow roses could mean either friendship or jealousy. That's all I can gather. If you wonder, it's not weird for Greek myth to have several versions since they were told in oral poetic tradition. These were stories passed down through storytelling, and there's no such thing as the single true version of the official Greek myth anyway. These are not all flowers that appeared in the mythology though. There are a lot more. But as the video title suggested, this video is only about flowers that were created for metamorphosis. If you like this kind of topic and want me to talk more about, either flowers or Greek myth, please tell me in the comment section. I already did some videos relating to flowers like this Floriography or the language of flowers video here. And that's it for today. I hope you have a nice day. See you on the next journey. I do have a love-hate relationship with longer videos like this. I love that I get to say everything I want to say, but then again, that's more work for me.